As you can see in this picture, I had over $5,000 in front of me. Before I break down this hand, I would like to talk about how this all happened. I was playing 1-3, where this player who's very well known for action at this casino walks into the room, and when that happens, I immediately pick up my chips and I follow him to the 2-5 table where I sit to the left of him. Obviously, I'm going to want position on this player because this guy's a maniac. So after doubling through him, I now have a stack of around $2,500, and that's when I look down at red pocket kings. I'm in the cutoff position, facing a raise, and I decide to put in the 3-bet to $75, very deep with the whole table, especially with this big blind player who actually has me covered. Me and him are 500 big blinds effective here, and he puts in the 4-bet to $175. My image at this table is that I have been extremely aggressive here. I definitely have a loose, aggressive image. So I think this definitely calls for a 5-bet here. I can't really remember the last time I've ever put in a 5-bet. But after doing it, my heart starts racing. My hands are shaking. My whole body is going numb because this looks like it's going to be a humongous pot. And sure enough, this big blind player announces raise. It was a pretty big raise, and I am not folding kings to this player. He could have pretty much anything here from what I've seen. So I 7-bet, rip it in. He's pretty much pot committed at this point to whatever he has. And sure enough, after actually 5 minutes, he ends up making the call. We run out the board. We see the ace on the river, and I am about to cry. And he says that I'm good. I show the kings, and we end up winning a $5,000 pot. Absolutely insane. I still can't believe it. He claimed to have king 7 offsuit. I guess the guy just wanted to gamble. I mean, this is absolutely incredible for me. By far the biggest pot I've ever won in my entire life playing poker. Without further ado, let's just get into some hands that I played the other day at the 1-3 level. Unfortunately, there was no 2-5 available this day, and I'm sitting down with just under $400 in my stack. I look down at Queen 10 offsuit from the straddle position, and it folds all the way to the big blind, and he decides to put in a min raise to $12. I'm getting a very excellent price on my money here. I'm definitely not going anywhere with the Queen 10 offsuit, so I put in the call. We see a excellent flop of King Jack 10 rainbow. So we flop bottom pair with an open-ended straight draw. And when he checks to me, he's basically giving me the green light to just bet at this. I'm treating this like a draw, even though I do have showdown value with the bottom pair. I put out a bet of $20 in there, about a pot-sized bet. Now, I know this isn't the most standard line to be taking here, but I just wanted to push my equity here. A lot of the 1-3 players at this casino, or any casino really, fold too much. Of course, it always depends on the player type. Obviously, if you're against a calling station, it's probably not best to be pushing equity here like this. But we put out another bet of $55. Pretty close to the pot again. We have roughly 250 left. And this guy wants all of it and announces all in. He has me covered. I have roughly 230 left. Doing the math in my head, I am just not getting the right price here against top pair holdings, and it's just a pretty sick spot. Pretty close to a break-even call, but I decide to just let my cards go and fold. He eventually shows us the King Deuce offsuit for some extremely thin value there, sitting at a very good table. After showing the King Deuce, he announces that he knew I was on a draw and there was no way I was doing it for value. So, okay, we add on for another 100, obviously, and we now look down at black pocket nines from the small blind position. There is a limp, and the same player who I just played with in the last hand decides to put in the raise to $13. Now, from the small blind position, I like to play a 3-bet or fold strategy most of the time, and I believe this hand falls into that category. So I decide to 3-bet to $65. a little bit on the big side, but I do not mind that being on the small blind. And this player eventually puts in the fold, so we are definitely battling here today at 1-3. Now this next hand that we look at just happens to be the best goddamn hand you could pick up in No Limit Texas Hold'em poker. Pocket aces. Couple orbits go by, we are in the small blind position once again, and all the action we get when it comes to us is a single limp. Obviously I'm going to be coming in for the raise here, and we make it $15 to go. Folds around to the limper, and he thinks about it for a second and throws in the call. So, got action with our aces. We now see a very interesting flop of 2-4-5 with 2 diamonds. We hold the ace of diamonds, and this board is not really good for my range here. It definitely smacks the limper's range, so I check to him, and he puts out an $11 bet. Now, I want to get value from all of his draws here, all of his marginal made hands, so I put out the check raise to $40. I have a very aggressive image at this table, so when I have it, it makes sense to do it to match the times when I don't have it or I'm on a very good draw. He makes the call pretty quickly, and we see the 9 of clubs on the turn. I lead out once again for $65, and he pretty much beats me into the pot here. Very indicative of a draw. So when the deuce of clubs hits the river here, every single draw misses. If he has a deuce, so be it. He's getting the rest of my stack. So with all these missed draws here, I think the best action here is to check, so that he can now bluff with his missed draws. I don't think I'm getting him to call with all these missed draws. I don't even think he's calling with his marginal made hands. So he puts in the jam, and as you can see, I snap call. He says, "You're good," and he obviously missed and turned his hand into a bluff. So, in my mind, I absolutely love the way I played this hand, and we got the absolute max from whatever he held. This table has turned into a heavy action table. We see the same player that's been sitting on our right put in a squeeze with 10-6 offsuit, so we definitely need to get in there and battle a little bit with our good hands. And that is exactly what we do here. We look down at pocket 8s, and the same player who just showed the 10-6 puts in a squeeze over a couple limps for $15. Now for pure value, I'm going to be putting in the 3-bet with the pocket 8s here. I think this is definitely ahead of this person's squeezing range, especially after showing the 10-6. So now folds around to this player, and he looks at me and asks me if I've ever been 4-bet before. I tell him not often, and then he puts in the call. We see a amazing flop where we absolutely kill this board with the middle set. 2 spades on board, and I put out a pretty standard continuation bet, a little bit on the big side because this guy is also very sticky. After I put out this C-bet, he stacks out a stack of green chips and puts out $225. I just want to capture this moment up and put it into a bottle so that I can save it for later. This is what dreams are made of. I think a jam here obviously makes the most sense, even though I'll never be bluffing with a jam here. I don't think he's going to be folding with whatever draw he has. He could have ace-king. He could have a number of hands here. So he makes the call pretty quickly. I show the 8s. We then see a ace followed by the deuce on the river. We now have 8s full of deuces. He claims to have had ace-king and throws his cards into the muck. So we casually scoop a $1,000 pot at 1-3. Absolutely incredible. This past month, I have been running extremely hot, and this is just the cherry on top here. Incredible to be winning this big of a pot at this small of a stake. It's also very nice for the whole table to see that I put in a 3-bet pre-flop with pocket 8s. It definitely adds to my aggressive image. I love building an aggressive image at the table because it helps me get paid off so much when I actually have it. I actually end up tightening up my ranges the more I get into a session. And I'm sure some people notice that, but for the most part, your average 1-3 player will not notice that at all. Next hand of note, we look down at ace-queen offsuit in a straddled pot, and there are 4 callers to the straddle, and I put in the squeeze to $42, and it gets the job done. Everyone folds around, and we pick up $24 without even seeing the flop. This is one of my favorite things to do at these passive limping tables. They all have extremely capped ranges here, and they're basically saying that they are willing to fold to a bet. And when they do call, I'm going to have them dominated. Next hand of note, we look down at black sixes from the button position. There are 3 limps to us, and we just put in the limp. If it was earlier in the session, I would be squeezing here a lot of the time, but because my image is extremely aggressive and they're going to stop believing me at some point, I just put in the limp. There is a raise to $25 from the big blind player, and one by one, each limper calls, and we're going to try to set mine here. We're going to try to spike a 6 on this flop, and we make the call as well. 5 ways to a flop, and we see the board of 8, 3, 4. With $130 in the middle, the pre-flop aggressor from the big blind position puts out a continuation bet of $35. Now, he's out of position betting into 4 players. Usually this is a very strong line, but this is such a small bet. One by one, all of the limpers fold to me, and I'm going to go ahead and make the call here. It's such a small bet, and we are still beating all the ace high, king high, queen high holdings that he could have. So we now see a great card on the turn, which is the 4 of diamonds. $200 in the middle, and this guy does not stop betting here. He now only throws out $50, and I think about raising just for a second because I don't think he has us beat. But I just put in the call. We have a marginal made hand. We have second pair on this board, and we're going to see a river card, which is the 8 of spades. So this is a fantastic board. He's going to think ace high is probably good here a lot of the time, and I'm expecting him to check over to me, but he throws out a bet of $75. This bet is extremely small, and I pick up on a tell. This bet sizing he also used when I first sat down at the table to bluff a guy. He threw out a $75 bet into around $400, $300 pot as a complete bluff, and the guy actually ended up folding because it looked so nutted. So with that bet sizing tell, this is honestly just a snap call. I think about it for a little bit and throw the money in the middle. The player now looks at his cards, he's hemming, he's hawing. I just show the 6s. I know that they are ahead here, and we scoop in a $450 pot. I was also getting a bazillion to 1 on my money. He bet $75 into a $300 pot. I need to only be right around like 15-20% of the time there, and I definitely think I was. Alright, next hand of note, we look down at 8, 7 of clubs from the cutoff position. There are 2 limps to us, and we just toss in the limp. I think that this is a hand that I could definitely add into my limping range here. My aggressive image is still live, so they're going to stop believing me at some point. Definitely going to switch to a more value-heavy range when betting here. Big blind player puts out the squeeze for $25 and 2 folds. I'm going to make the call. I'm fairly deep with this player, and this is a hand that loves to see flops. The button player also makes the call. So we go 3 ways to a flop of 6, 8, 9. We have middle pair with an open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. So we flop the world here. When it checks to me here, I decide to check. I like a bet here in the future. But that's what I decided to do, and the flop checks through, and we just get there immediately on the turn. We have a 10 high straight, 6 through 10, and the big blind player now leads out for $20. So a raise is definitely in order here, and I raise it up to $65. The button player folds, and the big blind player doesn't think about it for too long before making the call. 210 in the middle here, and we now see the board pairing 10 of diamonds on the river. I expect him to check to me, but unfortunately that is not what happens here. Big blind player now leads out for $105. This puts me in a really bad spot here. This turns my bottom end of the straight into a pure bluff catcher. I beat 0 value hands, actually. I lose to queen jack. I lose to boats. He wouldn't be doing this with overpairs. This guy is actually a solid player, so he'd be checking here a lot of the time with overpairs. He did squeeze pre-flop, so queen jack suited is definitely in his range. Pocket 9s, pocket 8s, sometimes pocket 6s. Quads is definitely in his range, but I don't beat any value here. I only beat bluffs, so theory-wise, I believe against this kind of player that this is a fold a lot of the time here. I just don't beat enough hands. I beat 0 value hands, and I only beat bluffs. I guess I could be calling for a chop sometimes with the same hand, maybe 7-8, 7-6, or even pocket sevens, but I do block that holding a 7 in my hand. He did only bet half the size of the pot, so I only need to be right here 25% of the time. And is he bluffing here 25% of the time? Am I calling for a chop here 25% of the time? That's what I'm hoping for when I toss in the call here. I believe he could have some bluffs sometimes, so I throw in the call, and he shows pocket 7, so it's a chop pot. And looking back on it, I really think a fold would have been the best option here. I do only need to be right 25% of the time, like I said, but I don't think that this player is finding anywhere close to enough bluffs here to be bluffing 25% of the time. Next hand of note, we look down at pocket kings. We raise it up, we see an ace high board, and we put in the fold to a bet. Gotta love the ace magnet. The person who did raise was on the tighter side, so I think it was a pretty standard fold, and he did end up showing an ace. That happened to be our last hand before deciding to call it quits for this session and end up booking a win.
All right, we are in the game tonight for 400. We added on for an extra 500.
You're saying way too much.
All right, we are in this game tonight for $500, and somehow, after only an hour and a half of playing at this 1-3 game, we are cashing out for $1,523 total. Wow. Obviously, we ran like God, but I am so happy with the way I played tonight. I think I made some fantastic calls, some good folds. And yeah, obviously that pocket 8's hand was pretty much a cooler against that guy's ace king, but I mean, wow. Absolutely amazing how soft the games are here at Resorts World, especially this 1-3 game. I could easily see an hourly here being above $30 an hour. That's how soft these games are. Max buy-in is 400, and you get all these soft players buying in for that much. It's amazing. If you guys appreciated this video, if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna get better with uploading. I'm very passionate about this, and I want you guys to be with me in my journey to becoming a professional poker player. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Peace.